Hello, myself Dr. Sunil Sawant, Professor and Head, Department of English, Kishanvir Mahavidyalaya Y. The topic of my presentation is the function of tragedy. Aristotle has given us the definition of tragedy in his book Poetics. There he defines tragedy as an imitation of an action that is serious, complete and of a certain magnitude. In language embellished with each kind of artistic embellishment, the several kinds being found in separate parts of the play in the form of action, not of narration, through pity and fear effecting the proper purgation of these emotions. This is the definition given to us by Aristotle, translated from Greek into English by Professor Bucha. The first part of this definition explains the nature of tragedy, and the second part of this definition tells us something about the function of tragedy. We are not concerned with the first part here. We are going to discuss the second part, that is the function of tragedy. Now, according to Aristotle, tragedy performs catharsis. The word catharsis, which appears in the definition of tragedy, has not been explained by Aristotle. Most of the other terms, such as mimesis, plot, character, have been explained by Aristotle, but he speaks very little about catharsis. And therefore, different critics, different readers have tried to find out what Aristotle means by catharsis. While discussing the function of tragedy, Aristotle makes it clear that tragedy performs catharsis of the emotions of pity and fear. But what does performing catharsis mean? And we have three different interpretations of this term catharsis. Now, the first interpretation of this term is catharsis is nothing but purgation. That is the first meaning the critics have associated with the function of tragedy. In this sense, catharsis is a medical metaphor, a medical term. What does it mean in medicine? Catharsis means the removal of excess or unnecessary elements from body. So in the medical context, the term catharsis is used for removing what is excess, what is unnecessary in the human body. The health of body depends upon a true balance of all elements. If they are in excess, they require an outlet. We need to remove these extra elements from the human body in order to maintain the health of human body. By extending this medical meaning of catharsis to tragedy, to literature, some critics believe that tragedy does what? It purges the excess or unhealthy passions through the action of the play. Tragedy arouses emotions of pity and fear, and some of the excessive emotions, they get purged when we watch tragedy. Purgation thus means the pathological effect on the mind comparable to the effect of medicine on body. The way some medicine helps to cure body, in the same way tragedy cures our mind. The action of tragedy cures our mind, and Milton, Twining, Barney, these critics, for them the meaning of catharsis is purgation. Now, second interpretation of the word catharsis is not purgation, but it is purification. Especially a critic like Humphrey House, he rejected the purgation theory in the medical sense of the term. For him, theatre is not a hospital and the audience are not patients. So for Humphrey House, the meaning of catharsis is not purgation but purification. House claims that tragedy gives us moral kind of learning, moral instructing or moral conditioning of mind. It is the idea of cleaning or cleansing of the soul that becomes important for Humphrey House. Tragedy, by arousing pity and fear, brings back the soul to a balanced state, purifying certain emotions. Tragedy trains and purifies the emotions and brings them to a balanced state. When we watch tragedy, certain emotions get purified and thereby we achieve a balanced state of mind. The emotions are directed towards the right objects at the right time. We are made virtuous and good. The purification theory is thus related to soul as the purgation is related to body. So the focus has been shifted from the body to the soul by Humphrey House, and critics like Butcher, Cornell, Lessing, they agree with this interpretation of Humphrey House that tragedy achieves catharsis, but what we mean by catharsis is not purgation but purification. Now, third interpretation, which is somewhat modern kind of interpretation of the word catharsis, of the term catharsis, critics like Leon Golden, O.B. Hardison and G.E. Ells think that Aristotle was mainly concerned with the intellectual effect and not the emotional effect of tragedy. Other critics were mainly concerned with the emotional effect of tragedy, those who talked about catharsis as purgation or purification. But for Golden and other critics, tragedy is concerned with the spectator's understanding of the events of plot. A tragedy presents some universal truths of human life through particular action of the play. So watching a tragedy gives us joy, pleasure, and this is called the aesthetic pleasure. Aristotle himself has said, if well imitated, pictures even of corpses and ugly creatures give us pleasure. So even something horrible, if it is presented artistically, it can give us artistic pleasure. The incidents like a person blinding himself, murdering his friend, or a husband killing his wife would horrify us in routine life. So if we watch somebody murdering some person in reality, we will get shocked. But if such incidents are presented very artistically in the course of the play, then they can create artistic pleasure. It depends upon the skill of the artist, the skill of the dramatist. If he succeeds in presenting the horrible action in a very artistic manner, then we can enjoy even that horrible incident performed on the stage as artistic. It can give us artistic kind of pleasure, aesthetic kind of pleasure. So what we find that Aristotle has used the term catharsis to explain the function of tragedy, and different critics have given us different interpretations of the term catharsis. Thank you very much.